Hello. This afternoon I'm going to tell you a little bit about drunkards and Romans and rail tracks and stuff like that. Right, let's start. There's a poem by K Chesterton that he wrote back in about 1913 called The Rolling English Road, and it starts, before the Roman came to Rye or out to Severn strode, the rolling English drunkard built the rolling English road. Now, he wrote that about English roads because most of them meander around and go around bends and across people's land and between land, and they don't follow any pattern. But then the Romans came to England, and of course they were all straight roads. So, we're going to talk about that. Now, American railroads are all the same size. They're all 4 feet, 8.5 inches in width. And the reason for that is that the original American railroad was built by English engineers. So what, I hear you say? Well, they are the same engineers who built the English railroads, and they built it to a gauge of exactly the same, 4 feet, 8.5 inches. And the reason for that is that before railroads, all freight and people were moved by coaches. And coaches, at 4 feet, 8.5 inch width of their wheels, is about the weight, about the width that they don't fall off and they don't break. So that's the reason for that. Now, the actual reason is this. When the Romans came to England, they built straight roads, and they built them using tree trunks. They would put tree trunks in lines along the road, fill them in with earth and rubble, and then harden them down on the top. That's why major roads are called trunk roads, but I'm sure you knew that. Now, everything moved by horse and cart, and it all started with the Romans. And the Romans moved around the country for a long time using their war chariots, or they walked, but their men walked, and their officers and their equipment and their supplies were moved using war chariots. And war chariots were all built in Rome, and they were all built to the width of 2 horses bottoms, or rumps, or rears, or whatever you want to call them. But they were 2 horses' width apart. And that is why the Roman chariots were 4 feet, 8.5 inches, wheel hub to wheel hub. Now, time goes on, and people in these chariots on English trunk roads, going straight up and down the country, made ruts. So anybody who came along with a different size wheelbase was going to get their wheels broken. So everybody built the same size width of wheel and axle, 4 feet, 8.5 inches. So that's why that is. Now, time moves on, and we're up to the present day. America is using 4 feet, 8.5 inches. And down in Utah, at a place called Theocol, the engineers there were building these massive rockets to be strapped to the side of the space shuttle, which was going up into space, and the rockets on the side give it propulsion, so you can steer it, so you can move a rocket one way or the other, up or down, sideways, left or right, by blasting various rockets at various times, which are strapped to the side of the space shuttle. Now, they built them in Utah, but they had to get them to Cape Canaveral, or Cape Kennedy as you wish to call it. The only way to do that was by train. So, in theory, they could make them any size, but they couldn't, because that train has to go through a number of tunnels, and there is very little space between the wheelbase of a train and the edge of the tunnel, so they were restricted. So, you now have a situation where the size of a rocket that is going into space in the 20th century is dependent on the width of two horses' arses. It's amazing what the size of a horse's bottom can achieve in the great scheme of things, isn't it? Anyway, that's enough from me. I'll come and talk to you again soon. But it's interesting, isn't it? You know? Well, you may have learned something, you may not. I don't really care. I enjoy telling people stuff, and that's drivel, isn't it? Bye-bye.